In the shadows of Pinewood Village, where winter's breath turned hopes to frost, lived an Omega named Lily, forgotten by most, remembered by none. Her hands, cracked from labor, carried the day's only reward, a single loaf of bread that would silence her hunger for one more night. The world had taught her to expect little, and give even less, to shrink herself until she nearly disappeared. But fate has curious ways of finding those who hide. On that snow-laden evening, with wolves howling in distant mountains and villagers barring their doors against the darkness, Lily would make a choice that defied everything she'd been taught about survival. One moment of compassion toward a wounded alpha wolf, a predator who could tear her apart with a single swipe, would shatter the careful isolation she'd built around her heart. What Lily couldn't know, as she extended her trembling hand with that precious offering, was that kindness in a world of cruelty shines like a beacon in endless night. That sometimes, the smallest acts of mercy can reshape destinies. That the mighty Alpha Dominic Blackwood, the legendary Wolf King himself, would recognize in her simple sacrifice something his power and position had never been able to buy: genuine compassion without expectation of reward. For an Omega with no scent, no pack, and no future, the path ahead would test every boundary she'd accepted as immutable. And for an Alpha who commanded hundreds with a mere glance, the greatest challenge would be surrendering to a strength that couldn't be measured in claws or fangs, but in the quiet courage of a heart that gave when it had nothing left to spare. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The bitter cold of winter gnawed at Lily's fingers as she trudged through the snow-laden streets of Pinewood. The small village, nestled between towering mountains and dense forests, had always been a harsh place for Omegas like her, especially those without a pack. Clutching her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, Lily ignored the hollow ache in her stomach. The single loaf of bread tucked safely in her basket represented her entire day's wages from the bakery. Mrs. Fletcher had been kind enough to employ her despite the whispers and sideways glances from the villagers. An unmated Omega without family was considered worse than bad luck. They were a burden, a liability. "Watch where you're going, Omega," a gruff voice snarled as a broad-shouldered beta bumped into her, nearly knocking her small frame into a snowbank. Lily kept her eyes downcast. "Sorry," she murmured, though the offense hadn't been hers. That was the way of things. Apologize, stay invisible, survive. The sky darkened earlier in winter, and already the street lamps were being lit. Lily needed to hurry. Being out after dark would only invite trouble. She quickened her pace, her worn boots slipping occasionally on the icy cobblestones. The shortcut through the forest's edge would save her 15 minutes, but it wasn't without risk. Wild wolves occasionally ventured close to the village boundaries, and not all of them maintained human consciousness in their wolf forms. Still, the thought of her tiny, unheated cottage compelled her forward. At least there, she could curl up under her threadbare blankets and escape the judgmental stares. The forest welcomed her with eerie silence. Snow muffled her footsteps as branches heavy with white powder hung low, forcing Lily to duck and weave her way through the increasingly narrow path. The wind had died down here, but the temperature seemed to drop with each step deeper into the woods. A soft whine broke the silence. Lily froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned toward the sound. There, partially concealed by the gnarled roots of an ancient oak, lay a massive wolf. Its silver-gray fur was matted with blood, one front paw clearly injured. But it was the eyes that caught Lily's attention, piercing amber that gleamed with intelligence too acute for an ordinary wolf. A shifter, then, and judging by the imposing size and the subtle power that radiated from him even in this weakened state, an alpha. Every instinct screamed at Lily to run. Alphas were dangerous, unpredictable. An injured alpha was even worse. They lashed out, driven by pain and the instinctive need to appear strong. But something held her in place. Perhaps it was the unmistakable suffering in those amber eyes, or maybe the Omega in her responding to an alpha in need. "You're hurt," she stated unnecessarily, her voice barely above a whisper. The wolf's ears flattened against his head, a low growl rumbling from his chest. A warning. Lily should have heeded it. Instead, she found herself slowly approaching, hands visible, movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I won't harm you," she said softly. "I just want to help." The growl intensified. The message was clear. Get away. Lily stopped, considering her options. The Alpha clearly didn't want her assistance, but she couldn't just leave him here to freeze or bleed out. The temperature would drop dangerously low tonight. Her gaze fell to her basket, to the precious loaf of bread that would be her dinner and breakfast. Without giving herself time to reconsider, she pulled it out and gently placed it on the snow, a few feet from the injured wolf. "You need strength to heal," she explained, as if the wolf might understand her reasoning. "It's not much, but it's fresh. Mrs. Fletcher baked it this morning." The Alpha's growl subsided, replaced by a curious tilt of his massive head. "I need to go," Lily continued, taking a careful step back. "But I'll come back tomorrow, with bandages if you're still here." She wasn't sure why she made the promise. Perhaps it was the unexpected softening in those fierce eyes, or the small whine that escaped the wolf as she began to retreat. Lily turned and continued along the path, resisting the urge to look back. Her stomach protested loudly, reminding her of the sacrifice she'd just made. She would go to bed hungry tonight, but somehow, that seemed less important than the injured Alpha she was leaving behind. What she didn't see as she disappeared into the deepening shadows was the wolf cautiously pulling the bread closer with his uninjured paw, his amber eyes never leaving her retreating form. The cottage was as cold as Lily had expected. The fireplace contained only ashes, and her supply of firewood had dwindled to a few meager logs. Still, she managed to coax a small flame to life, enough to take the deadly edge off the chill, but not enough to truly warm the tiny space. As she huddled before the pitiful fire, wrapped in every blanket she possessed, Lily wondered about the Alpha in the woods. Had she imagined the intelligence in those eyes? The almost human understanding? Lone Alphas were rare. They typically led packs, surrounded by loyal betas and omegas who attended to their needs and carried out their commands. What was this one doing alone, injured in the wilderness bordering a small village like Pinewood? Her musings were interrupted by a sharp knock at her door. Lily tensed. No one visited her. No one even knew where she lived, except Mrs. Fletcher and the landlord who collected her rent every month. Another knock, more insistent this time. Cautiously, Lily unwrapped herself from her blanket cocoon and approached the door. "Who is it?" she called, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "Open the door, Omega." The voice was deep, authoritative, undeniably Alpha, but not one she recognized from the village. With shaking hands, Lily lifted the latch. The door swung open to reveal a man she had never seen before. Tall and broad-shouldered, he dominated the doorway, his presence somehow making her small cottage seem even tinier. Dark hair fell across his forehead, partially obscuring eyes that sparked with amber fire, familiar eyes that had regarded her from a wolf's face just hours ago. "You," she breathed. The Alpha's jaw tightened as he glanced past her into the dismal cottage. "You live here?" He didn't wait for an answer, pushing past her into the single room that served as kitchen, bedroom, and living space all at once. Lily remained by the door, her heart hammering in her chest. How had he found her? Why had he sought her out? "Your fire is pathetic," he said bluntly, moving to examine the nearly extinguished flames. I'm sorry," Lily stammered, the apology automatic. The Alpha turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You gave me bread." It wasn't a question, but Lily nodded anyway. "You were hurt. I still am." He gestured to his left leg, where blood seeped through the fabric of his pants. "But I could have hunted, could have found food elsewhere." Lily swallowed hard. "I didn't think." "No, you didn't," he interrupted. "You didn't think that I could feed myself. You didn't think that I would notice the way your ribs pressed against your dress. You didn't think that I would smell the hunger on you even as you gave away your only meal." Heat rushed to Lily's cheeks. "It wasn't—" "Don't lie to me, Omega." The command in his voice made her flinch. "I can smell deceit as easily as I can smell fear. And right now, you reek of both." Lily's hands curled into fists at her sides. "Then why are you here? To mock my generosity? To reprimand me for trying to help?" The Alpha's eyebrows rose slightly, surprise flickering across his features before his expression settled back into stoic assessment. "I'm here because no one has shown me kindness in a very long time," he said finally. "And never at their own expense." Before Lily could respond, he reached into his coat and withdrew a package wrapped in brown paper. "Here." Warily, Lily accepted it. The package was warm to the touch and heavy. When she unwrapped it, the rich aroma of roasted meat filled the cottage, making her mouth water involuntarily. Eat, the Alpha commanded. Pride warred with hunger as Lily stared at the feast before her. Enough to last her days. Not just a single meal. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. He moved past her toward the door. Consider it payment for the bread. Wait, Lily called out, as his hand reached for the latch. Your leg, I can help. I know a little about healing. The Alpha paused, studying her with those unsettling amber eyes. Why would you help me? Lily met his gaze, surprising herself with her steadiness. For the same reason I gave you my bread, because you needed it. For a long moment neither spoke. Then, with a small nod that might have been respect, the Alpha returned to sit by the fire. Very well, Omega. Show me this healing knowledge of yours. As Lily gathered her meager medical supplies, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just occurred, something that would change the course of her life forever. What she couldn't possibly know was just how right she was. Dawn broke with unusual clarity, sunlight streaming through Lily's single window and casting long shadows across the wooden floor. For a moment, she lay still, savoring the rare feeling of a full stomach and a warm cottage. The Alpha, who had eventually introduced himself as Dominic, had replenished her firewood before departing the previous night, leaving her with a crackling blaze that had lasted through the early hours. Her fingers absently traced the bandage she'd applied to his leg. He had remained mostly silent during her ministrations, only occasionally grunting when she'd cleaned the deep gash that ran from knee to ankle. A bear trap, he'd admitted reluctantly when she'd questioned the unusual wound pattern. The memory of his intense gaze lingered in her mind. Even wounded, there had been nothing weak about Dominic. Power had radiated from him like heat from a flame, and Lily had found herself simultaneously drawn to and intimidated by his presence. A sharp knock at her door jolted her from her thoughts. "Lily! Open up, girl," Mrs. Fletcher's familiar voice called, edged with unusual urgency. Lily hurried to the door, wrapping her thin robe tightly around her nightgown. "Mrs. Fletcher, what's wrong?" The plump beta woman pushed inside, her normally rosy cheeks flushed darker with exertion and excitement. "You need to come to the village square right away," she said, already moving to Lily's small dresser and pulling out clothes. "Everyone's talking about it. The Northern Pack has arrived." Lily accepted the dress Mrs. Fletcher thrust at her, confusion furrowing her brow. "The Northern Pack? I don't understand. Why would they come here?" The Northern Pack was legendary, the largest and most powerful pack in the region, perhaps in the entire country. They controlled territories spanning hundreds of miles, from the Frost Mountains to the Silver Lakes. Pinewood was nothing to them, a speck on the map not worth their notice. "No one knows," Mrs. Fletcher replied, turning discreetly as Lily changed. They arrived at dawn, 300 strong. Their wolves formed a perimeter around the entire village, and their Alpha has demanded a meeting with our council. A chill ran down Lily's spine that had nothing to do with the morning air. 300 wolves, she repeated numbly. "And you want me to go there? Mrs. Fletcher, you know how the villagers feel about unmated Omegas. I'll just cause trouble." The older woman turned back, her expression softening. "Oh, child, that's exactly why you must come. The Northern Alpha specifically requested your presence." The world seemed to tilt beneath Lily's feet. "Me? That's impossible. I don't know anyone from the Northern Pack." Mrs. Fletcher's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you certain? Because their Alpha described you perfectly. The Omega with chestnut hair who smells of cinnamon and fresh bread." Lily's hand flew to her throat, where her scent glands pulsed with sudden alarm. Dominic. It had to be. But that would mean, Dominic is the Northern Alpha. The words escaped in a horrified whisper. Mrs. Fletcher's eyebrows shot upward. "You know Alpha Dominic Blackwood? The Wolf King?" Wolf King. The title echoed in Lily's mind, bringing with it whispered legends she'd heard since childhood. Stories of an Alpha so powerful that he could command even other Alphas, whose pack grew not by birth but by choice, as wolves from all territories sought the protection and prosperity the Northern Pack provided. And she had bandaged his leg, had spoken to him as an equal, had even questioned his judgment. "I need to sit down," Lily murmured, her legs suddenly weak. Mrs. Fletcher guided her to the bed. "What happened, Lily? How do you know the Wolf King?" Haltingly, Lily recounted her encounter in the forest, the bread she'd given, Dominic's unexpected visit to her cottage. With each word, Mrs. Fletcher's eyes grew wider. "Oh, my dear girl, she breathed when Lily finished. Do you have any idea what this means? Lily shook her head miserably. That I've somehow offended the most powerful alpha in the territory? That he's come with his entire pack to make an example of me? To her surprise, Mrs. Fletcher laughed. A bright, delighted sound. Offended him. Lily, don't you see? You showed kindness to the Wolf King when he was vulnerable. You treated him with dignity rather than deference. She clasped Lily's hands between her own. In all the stories, that's the one thing Alpha Blackwood values above all else. Genuine compassion, without expectation of reward. Lily wasn't convinced. Then why bring 300 wolves? Why surround the village? I suppose we'll find out, Mrs. Fletcher replied, pulling Lily to her feet. But we won't discover anything sitting here. Come now, finish dressing. The walk to the village square seemed both interminable and far too short. Whispers followed Lily like shadows. Gazes that had previously slid past her now fixed on her, with undisguised curiosity and suspicion. Word had spread quickly about the Northern Alpha's specific request. The square itself had been transformed. Where usually there would be market stalls and villagers going about their business, now there stood rows of wolves, massive beasts whose shoulders would reach Lily's waist, their fur a tapestry of grays, browns, blacks, and whites. They formed a corridor leading to the raised platform where Pinewood's council conducted official business. And there, standing before the 5 elderly council members, was Dominic. If he had seemed imposing in her tiny cottage, here he was magnificent. Dressed in formal pack attire, a deep blue tunic embroidered with silver thread, black pants tucked into polished boots, he dominated the space through sheer presence. His dark hair was pulled back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face and the intensity of those amber eyes that immediately found her in the crowd. The village fell silent as Lily approached, the corridor of wolves parting further to allow her passage. She felt hundreds of eyes upon her, judging, assessing, curious. Omega Lily, Elder Graves, head of the council, called out, "Please approach." Her heart hammering against her ribs, Lily walked forward until she stood at the base of the platform, a few feet from where Dominic towered. She kept her gaze lowered, uncertain of the proper protocol. "Look at me," Dominic commanded, his voice carrying effortlessly across the square. Slowly, Lily raised her eyes to meet his. To her surprise, there was no anger in his expression, no contempt, only a quiet assessment that somehow calmed her racing pulse. "Do you know why I've come?" he asked. Lily shook her head. "No, Alpha." Dominic turned to address the council and the gathered villagers. "Yesterday I was injured while patrolling the borders of my territory. A hunter's trap, meant for bears, nearly severed my leg. Had I remained in wolf form, I might have bled out before my pack found me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lily could feel the weight of accusatory stares, villagers assuming she had set the trap, perhaps. "In that moment of vulnerability," Dominic continued, "a lone Omega came upon me. She had every reason to fear me, to flee, to report my presence to her village. Instead, she offered me her only food, bread that represented her day's wages and her next 2 meals. The murmurs intensified. Lily could hear the disbelief, the skepticism. Later, when I sought her out, I found her living in conditions no wolf should endure. Cold, hungry, alone." Dominic's voice hardened, his gaze sweeping over the villagers with unmistakable judgment. "Yet when I offered her food in return, her first concern was still my welfare. She insisted on treating my wound, using supplies she clearly could not afford to spare." Elder Graves cleared his throat nervously. "Alpha Blackwood, while this is certainly a touching story, I fail to see why it required the presence of your entire pack." Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly. "I came with my pack, Elder, because what affects their alpha affects them all. And what I witnessed yesterday affects us all." He paused, his gaze returning to Lily. "In my territories, no wolf goes hungry while others feast. No Omega is left unprotected or unsheltered. And no act of genuine compassion goes unrecognized." With deliberate movements, Dominic descended the platform steps until he stood directly before Lily. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, he lowered himself to one knee. "Omega Lily," he said, his voice softer but no less commanding, "I came to offer you a place in the Northern Pack. Not as a subordinate, not as a charity case, but as an honored member whose compassion exemplifies the values we hold most dear. Lily couldn't breathe. The Wolf King, the alpha of alphas, was kneeling before her, offering her a home, a pack, a future. I don't know what to say, she stammered. Dominic's lips curved into the barest hint of a smile. Say yes. Come with us. Help me build a world where kindness isn't remarkable but expected. Before Lily could respond, Elder Graves interjected, his voice strained. Alpha Blackwood, surely this isn't necessary. Lily is, that is to say, she's just... Choose your next words with extreme care, Elder, Dominic cut in, rising to his full height. This Omega showed more honor, courage, and compassion in one act than I've witnessed from your entire village. So tell me, what exactly is she just? The Elder's mouth opened and closed without sound, his face paling under Dominic's stare. Around them, the wolves of the northern pack had begun to shift. Not aggressively, but purposefully. One by one, they changed from wolf to human form, each dropping to one knee in perfect synchronicity. 300 wolves, from the largest beta to the smallest omega, all kneeling in acknowledgement of Lily's act. This is how we honor true strength in the northern pack, Dominic explained, gesturing to his kneeling wolves. Not strength of claw or fang, but strength of heart. Strength of principle. Tears blurred Lily's vision as she looked around at the kneeling pack members, at their expressions of genuine respect. No one had ever looked at her that way before, like she mattered, like she was valuable. Yes, she whispered, then more firmly, yes, I'll come with you. Dominic nodded once, satisfaction evident in his expression. Pack your belongings. We leave at noon. As he turned to rejoin his betas, Lily found her voice again. Alpha Dominic? He paused, glancing back at her with a raised eyebrow. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing me. Something softened in his amber eyes. No, Lily, thank you for seeing me, not as an alpha to be feared, but as a wolf in need. And in that moment, surrounded by 300 wolves who had knelt in her honor, Lily understood that her life would never be the same again. What she couldn't yet comprehend was just how profound that change would be, or the role she would play in the destiny of the Northern Pack. The Northern Pack traveled with efficient precision, covering ground at a pace that would have exhausted Lily had she been walking. Instead, she found herself seated on a sturdy chestnut mare, one of many horses the pack had brought for those who preferred not to journey in wolf form. We maintain a connection with the Eastern horse traders, Dominic had explained when he'd presented her with the gentle mare. Not all pack business can be conducted on 4 paws. Now, as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the horizon, Lily marveled at the organization around her. The pack moved like a living organism, scouts ranging ahead and to the sides, stronger wolves positioning themselves protectively around the elderly, the very young, and the few who traveled on horseback. Dominic himself alternated between wolf and human form, sometimes loping alongside the horses, sometimes shifting to consult with his betas about their route or to check on pack members. Despite his attention being pulled in multiple directions, he seemed to maintain a constant awareness of where Lily was, occasionally appearing at her side, just as her thoughts turned to him. How much farther? She asked, when he materialized beside her horse for the 3rd time that afternoon, now in human form and fully dressed. She still wasn't entirely accustomed to the way shifters could transition so seamlessly between forms, their clothes somehow manifesting when they returned to human shape. We'll reach the southern boundary of Northern Territory by nightfall, Dominic replied, his stride easily matching her horse's walk. We'll make camp there. The main settlement is another day's journey beyond. Lily nodded, trying to hide her relief. Though the mare was comfortable enough, Lily's body wasn't accustomed to riding. Her muscles ached in places she hadn't known could ache. Dominic's keen gaze missed nothing. You're in pain. It wasn't a question, but Lily answered anyway. Just stiff. I've never ridden before. A flash of something, perhaps regret, crossed his features. I should have considered that. We can stop earlier if... No, Lily interrupted, then immediately flushed at her boldness. I mean, I'm fine, truly. There's no need to delay the entire pack for my comfort. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Your consideration for others is admirable, Lily, but in the Northern Pack, we acknowledge our needs without shame. If you require rest, we rest. Before she could formulate a response, a commotion erupted near the front of the traveling column. A young wolf, barely more than a pup, had broken formation and was charging playfully through the ranks, causing disorder as adult wolves swerved to avoid trampling him. Connor, Dominic sighed, though there was more fondness than irritation in his tone. With a fluid motion that took Lily's breath away, he shifted into his massive wolf form and bounded forward. The silver-gray wolf intercepted the pup with gentle precision, catching him by the scruff and depositing him before a harried-looking female who immediately began scolding the youngster with a series of short barks. When Dominic returned to Lily's side, human once more, his lips twitched with suppressed amusement. Connor is Elena's youngest, his first full-pack journey, and he's determined to make it memorable for everyone. Lily couldn't help but smile. He's adorable. He's a menace, Dominic corrected, though his eyes remained warm, but a beloved one. Elena was one of the first to join my pack years ago. Her mate died defending their previous territory from rogues. She was pregnant with Connor at the time. The casual revelation sent a wave of sadness through Lily. That's terrible. Dominic nodded, his expression sobering. It was. But in the northern pack, she found safety, support, a new family. Connor has never known hunger or fear. He has dozens of aunts and uncles who would die to protect him. He glanced at Lily. That's what pack means to us. Not just strength in numbers, but strength in connection. Lily thought of her lonely cottage, of the years she'd spent existing on the fringes of Pinewood society. No connections, no protections, no one who would notice or care if she simply disappeared. It sounds wonderful, she said softly. Dominic's gaze lingered on her face. It is, but it isn't perfect. We face challenges like any community. The difference is that we face them together. A comfortable silence fell between them as they continued onward, broken only when a sleek black wolf approached, her movements purposeful. She shifted into a tall woman with striking features and close-cropped hair, falling into step on Dominic's other side. Alpha, she greeted, her tone respectful but familiar. The scouts report clear paths ahead, but there's a storm building to the north. We should reach the boundary before it hits. Thank you, Nadia. Dominic gestured toward Lily. Nadia, this is Lily. Lily, meet my head beta and oldest friend. Nadia inclined her head, her dark eyes assessing Lily with undisguised curiosity. The omega with the bread. Your reputation precedes you. Heat crept up Lily's neck. It was just bread, she mumbled. It wasn't just anything, Nadia replied, her tone softening slightly. Our alpha rarely misjudges character, but he's been known to overlook his own worth. You saw him as he is, not as his title dictates. That's unusual. Before Lily could respond, shouts erupted from the rear of the pack. Dominic tensed, immediately alert, his nostrils flaring as he scented the air. Blood, he growled. Nadia, but the beta was already shifting, her sleek black form racing toward the disturbance. Dominic turned to Lily, his expression grave. Stay here, he commanded. If there's danger, the pack will protect you. Then he too was gone, leaving Lily alone with her increasingly nervous mare. Around her, the pack formation tightened, wolves moving closer together, those in human form shifting quickly to their stronger wolf shapes. Lily strained to see what was happening, but the press of bodies around her obscured her view. The tension in the air was palpable, wolves growling low in their throats, hackles raised. Then, cutting through the tension like a knife, came a child's wail, high and terrified. Without conscious thought, Lily urged her mare forward, weaving through the protective formation of wolves. Some tried to block her path, but the horse was nimble, and Lily's determination gave her courage she hadn't known she possessed. She broke through the last rank of wolves to find a small clearing had formed at the rear of the pack. In its center stood Dominic and Nadia, facing a group of rough-looking men armed with silver-tipped weapons. Between them, clutched in the arms of the largest man, was Connor, the young wolf pup now in human form, tears streaming down his face. Last warning, Blackwood, the man snarled, pressing a silver blade against the child's throat. We want safe passage through your territory, and half your winter stores, or the pup dies screaming. Dominic's stance was deceptively relaxed, but Lily could see the lethal tension in every line of his body. And I've given you my answer, Vance. Release the child, and I'll consider letting you live. The man, Vance, laughed, though the sound held no humor. You're not in a position to make threats. My men have this place surrounded. Silver weapons against your precious pack. How many will fall before you reconsider?" Lily's gaze darted to the trees surrounding the path. Sure enough, she could make out shadowy figures positioned among them, bows drawn, arrows glinting with what could only be silver tips. Her heart hammered in her chest. Silver was one of the few substances that could truly harm shifters, preventing their rapid healing and causing wounds that festered and scarred. A well-placed silver arrow could kill even an alpha. Elena, Connor's mother, was being physically restrained by 2 beta wolves, her face a mask of anguish as she stared at her captive son. The sight stirred something primal in Lily's chest, a protective instinct she hadn't known she possessed. Before she could reconsider, Lily slid from her horse and stepped forward, placing herself at Dominic's side. "Lily," he growled without looking at her. "Get back." She ignored him, her focus entirely on the frightened child and the brute holding him. "Let him go," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He's just a pup." Vance's gaze flicked to her, dismissive at first, then sharpening with interest. "And what do we have here? A new plaything, Blackwood? Bit plain for your usual taste." Dominic's growl deepened, a warning that vibrated through the air. "She is under my protection. Address her again, and I'll tear out your throat." "Such devotion," Vance mocked. "Perhaps we should take her too. See if you value her as much as you claim." Lily felt rather than saw Dominic's control slipping, the rage building within him. If he attacked now, Connor would die. She had to do something, anything, to defuse the situation. "I'll go with you," she said suddenly. All eyes turned to her, including Dominic's, blazing with shock and fury. "Lily," he began, but she cut him off with a subtle shake of her head. "I'll go with you," she repeated to Vance. "If you release the boy unharmed, right now, before anyone else gets hurt." Vance's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why would you offer that? What are you to the pup?" "Nothing," Lily answered honestly. "But I'm an Omega without a pack. No one will miss me. Connor has a mother who loves him, a pack that needs him." She swallowed hard. "I'm expendable. He isn't." "No." Dominic's voice cracked like thunder, his control visibly fraying. "No one in my pack is expendable." Vance watched the exchange with growing interest, his grip on Connor loosening slightly as his attention divided. Well, the great Wolf King, undone by a slip of an Omega. Fascinating. Lily took a cautious step forward, then another. "Let him go," she urged softly. "I'll come quietly. You won't have to worry about the Alpha or his pack following. They'll be too busy ensuring Connor's safety." She was close enough now to see the conflict in Vance's eyes, the temptation of her offer warring with his obvious desire to hurt Dominic. Connor whimpered, his small body trembling. "Please," Lily whispered, meeting the child's terrified gaze and offering a reassuring smile. "It's going to be okay, Connor." Something in her tone, in her unwavering certainty, seemed to reach the boy. He stopped struggling, his eyes fixed on Lily's face like she was his salvation. And in that moment of distraction, everything changed. Connor's small body suddenly went limp, a dead weight in Vance's arms. The man instinctively adjusted his grip, the silver blade momentarily moving away from the child's throat. It was all the opening Dominic needed. One moment he was beside Lily, the next he was a blur of motion, silver-gray fur flashing in the fading light as he launched himself at Vance. The attack was precisely calculated, not going for the throat as he'd threatened, but for the arm holding the knife. Vance screamed as Dominic's powerful jaws clamped around his wrist, the sickening crack of breaking bones audible even over the sudden cacophony of battle cries and growls. Connor dropped to the ground and immediately shifted, his small wolf form darting between legs in chaos, straight to his mother. The forest erupted into conflict. Arrows flew from the trees, but the northern wolves were ready, dodging with supernatural speed or intercepting the projectiles with their own bodies to protect the vulnerable. Nadia led a contingent of betas in a coordinated assault on the hidden archers, while others engaged the bandits who had been with Vance. Lily stood frozen in the center of it all, her mind struggling to process the violence unfolding around her. A flash of movement to her right registered too late. One of Vance's men, charging toward her with a silver-tipped spear. She braced for pain, for the end, but it never came. Instead, a massive weight knocked her to the ground, a familiar silver-gray form positioning itself protectively over her. as the spear meant for her heart embedded itself in Dominic's shoulder. The Alpha didn't falter, didn't even whimper. With a snarl of pure rage, he twisted and lunged, taking the bandit's throat in his powerful jaws. One savage shake and it was over, the man collapsing in a heap as Dominic released him. Then, impossibly, Dominic was human again, kneeling beside Lily, his hand cradling her face. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice rough with concern. Lily shook her head, unable to speak, her gaze fixed on the wound in his shoulder where the spear had been. It was already healing before her eyes, but the flesh around it was blackened, silver poisoning seeping into his system. "You're injured," she managed finally. "Silver?" "It's nothing," Dominic dismissed, though the tightness around his eyes betrayed his pain. "What were you thinking, offering yourself to that monster? Do you have any idea what he would have done to you?" Lily met his gaze steadily. "I knew exactly what he would have done, but Connor would have been safe." Something indefinable flashed in Dominic's eyes. Anger, admiration, fear, perhaps all three. "Your life is not currency to be traded, Lily. Not for Connor's, not for mine, not for anyone's." Around them, the sounds of battle were fading. The Northern Pack had overwhelmed the bandits, their superior numbers and coordination proving decisive. Vance himself was being held down by 4 wolves, his face contorted with rage and pain. Dominic helped Lily to her feet, his touch gentle despite the tension radiating from him. "This conversation isn't over," he warned, "but it will have to wait." He strode toward Vance, his authority a tangible force that seemed to press the air from Lily's lungs. The pack parted before him, creating a path to where the bandit leader knelt, defeated. "You've attacked my pack, threatened a child, and attempted to kill an innocent Omega," Dominic stated, his voice carrying across the now silent clearing. "By pack law, your life is forfeit." Vance spat blood onto the ground. "Then get on with it, Blackwood. I'm not begging for mercy." "Good," Dominic replied coldly, "because you won't receive any." Lily turned away as Dominic shifted once more, unable to watch the execution that followed. Instead, her gaze found Connor, now back in human form, and clutched tightly in his mother's arms. Elena's eyes met Lily's over her son's head, a world of gratitude in their depths. When Dominic returned to Lily's side, human once more, there was blood on his hands, but a calmness to his expression that hadn't been there before. "We need to move," he said simply. "This place isn't safe for the night." Lily nodded, allowing him to help her back onto her mare. As the pack reformed around them, more subdued now but no less vigilant, she noticed Nadia approaching, a deep gash across her cheek that was already beginning to heal. "The territory boundary is just ahead," the beta reported. "We've secured the area. No more surprises." Dominic nodded, his hand still resting on Lily's knee, a point of warmth in the gathering chill. "Double the night watch. I want our most experienced wolves on rotation." Nadia's gaze flickered between Dominic and Lily, something knowing in her expression. "Of course, Alpha." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "She surprised us all today." After Nadia departed, Lily found herself under Dominic's intense scrutiny. "You could have died," he said bluntly. "So could you," she countered, gesturing to his shoulder where the wound, though healed, had left a visible scar, a rarity for shifters. "I'm an Alpha. It's my responsibility to protect the pack, and I'm part of the pack now," Lily replied. "You said so yourself. Doesn't that mean I share some of that responsibility?" Dominic's expression softened, his hand squeezing her knee gently. "You're extraordinary, Lily. But please, never trade your life so casually again. I couldn't—" He stopped, seeming to catch himself. "The pack couldn't bear to lose you." As they continued toward the boundary and the promise of safety beyond, Lily pondered Dominic's words and the emotion behind them. For the first time in her life, she felt truly valued, not just for what she could offer or provide, but for who she was. And as the Northern Territory welcomed them with the first dusting of evening snow, Lily realized that somewhere between giving a wounded wolf her bread and standing beside an Alpha against bandits, she had found not just a pack, but a purpose. What she couldn't yet know was how that purpose would soon test not only her courage, but the very foundations of everything Dominic had built. The Northern Pack's main settlement took Lily's breath away. Nestled in a valley protected by towering mountains on 3 sides, it sprawled across more land than Pinewood had occupied, its structures a harmonious blend of traditional and modern design. Log cabins with smoke curling from stone chimneys stood alongside larger communal buildings. A river bisected the settlement, bridges connecting the two halves with elegant arches. "Welcome to Silvercrest," Dominic said as they crested the final hill. The panorama of the settlement spread before them. Lily couldn't hide her awe. "It's beautiful. It's home," Dominic replied simply, though pride colored his tone. "Our pack has grown significantly in the last decade. We've had to expand accordingly." As they descended into the valley, pack members emerged from homes and workshops, gathering to welcome their alpha's return. Children ran alongside the procession, their excited yips and calls filling the air with joyful noise. Unlike in Pinewood, where omegas like Lily were viewed with suspicion or pity, here all designations intermingled freely, alphas, betas, and omegas working together, laughing together, living together as true equals. Dominic led her to a large cabin near the center of the settlement, its sturdy construction and prominent position marking it as important without being ostentatious. "You'll stay here until you've settled in," he explained as they dismounted. "It's close to the pack hall and has everything you'll need." Lily glanced around, noting the curious stares of nearby pack members. "Whose home is this?" A flicker of something, embarrassment, crossed Dominic's features. "Mine, but I rarely use it. I spend most nights patrolling or handling pack business." Before Lily could process the implications of staying in the Alpha's personal dwelling, they were surrounded. Pack members approached in waves, each waiting respectfully for Dominic's acknowledgement before stepping forward to introduce themselves to Lily. Their genuine welcome overwhelmed her. Hands extended in greeting, smiles that reached eyes, invitations to meals and gatherings offered freely. "They're curious about you," Nadia explained when she appeared at Lily's side, the scar on her cheek now just a thin pink line. "Word travels fast in a pack. They all know how you offered yourself in Connor's place." Lily flushed. "I did what anyone would have done." Nadia's dark eyes gleamed with something like approval. "No, you did what few would have the courage to do. There's a difference." She glanced toward Dominic, who was deep in conversation with a group of senior pack members. "He hasn't stopped watching you, you know, even when he seems focused elsewhere." The observation sent an unexpected warmth spiraling through Lily's chest. "He's just being protective. I'm new, unfamiliar with pack ways." Nadia's laugh was brief but genuine. "Is that what you think?" She shook her head, amusement evident in her expression. "For someone so perceptive about others, you're remarkably blind about certain things." Before Lily could ask what she meant, Elena approached, Connor clinging to her hand. The boy's eyes were wide as he gazed up at Lily, a mixture of awe and lingering fear in their depths. "Thank you," Elena said simply, her voice thick with emotion. "For what you did. For Connor." Lily knelt until she was at eye level with the young wolf. "Are you okay, Connor?" The boy nodded solemnly, then surprised her by launching himself into her arms, his small body trembling slightly. "You were brave," he whispered against her neck. "Really, really brave." Lily's arms tightened around him, her heart swelling with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "So were you," she whispered back. "You didn't cry or scream when that bad man held you. That helped us save you." Connor pulled back, his expression brightening. "Really? Really," Lily confirmed, tapping his nose gently. "You're going to be a strong wolf someday." "Like Alpha Dominic," Lily smiled. "Just like him." As Connor beamed under the praise, Elena caught Lily's gaze, her eyes shining with tears and gratitude. "You'll always have friends in this pack," she promised. "Anything you need, anything at all, you only have to ask." The sincerity of the offer left Lily momentarily speechless. In Pinewood, she'd existed for years without a single person offering such unconditional support. Here, within hours of arriving, she'd found not just acceptance, but true connection. As the evening deepened, the pack dispersed to their homes, leaving Lily alone with Dominic outside his cabin. The silver of his eyes seemed to catch and hold the moonlight as he regarded her. "You should rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow will bring new adjustments." Lily nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she truly was. The journey, the bandit attack, the emotional whirlwind of arriving at Silvercrest, it all crashed over her at once, leaving her swaying slightly on her feet. Dominic steadied her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "I've had food prepared inside. Eat, then sleep. We'll talk more in the morning. You're not staying? The question slipped out before Lily could stop it, bringing heat to her cheeks. Something softened in Dominic's expression. No. As I said, I rarely use this cabin. There are matters I must attend to after our journey. He hesitated, then added, but I'll be nearby if you need anything. Just call my name. I'll hear you. With that, he turned and strode away, his powerful form soon disappearing among the shadows of the settlement. Lily watched him go, a strange emptiness settling in her chest at his departure. Inside the cabin, she found a simple but hearty meal waiting on the table. Roasted venison, fresh bread, and vegetables still steaming from the pot. The sight and smell reminded her forcefully that she hadn't eaten since midday. As she ate, Lily explored the cabin with curious eyes. It was larger than it had appeared from outside, with a main living area dominated by a stone fireplace, a well-appointed kitchen, and what appeared to be a study filled with books and maps. A narrow staircase led to an upper level where, she assumed, the bedrooms would be located. Despite its size, the cabin felt lived in, personal in a way that surprised her. She had expected something austere, perhaps, or overly formal, a reflection of Dominic's status rather than his personality. Instead, she found small touches that spoke of the man behind the Alpha, well-worn books with marked pages, a carved wooden wolf that looked handmade, sketches of the territory pinned beside more formal maps. After finishing her meal, Lily climbed the stairs to discover 2 bedrooms. The larger one was clearly Dominic's, though it showed signs of infrequent use. The bed was made with military precision, the surfaces dust-free but impersonal. The smaller room had been prepared for her. Fresh linens on the bed, a vase of wildflowers on the dresser, a pitcher of water and basin for washing. Exhaustion claimed her almost as soon as her head touched the pillow, pulling her into a deep, dreamless sleep. Lily woke to the sound of voices below, hushed but urgent. Sunlight streamed through the window, suggesting she had slept well past dawn. Embarrassment flushed through her as she hurriedly dressed and made her way downstairs. She found Dominic and Nadia in the main room, their conversation breaking off abruptly as she appeared. "I'm sorry," Lily said immediately. "I didn't mean to sleep so late." Dominic shook his head, dismissing her concern. "You needed the rest. How do you feel?" "Better," she admitted, though still a bit overwhelmed. Nadia exchanged a significant look with Dominic, before moving toward the door. "I'll see to the preparations," she said cryptically, then nodded to Lily before departing. Alone with Dominic, Lily became acutely aware of the tension in his posture, the uncharacteristic hesitation in his manner. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Dominic gestured for her to sit, taking the chair opposite her. "News reached us this morning. The Southern Pack is moving against our borders, claiming we've sheltered rogues who've been raiding their territory." Lily frowned. "But that's not true. We encountered rogues on our journey here, and they certainly weren't under your protection." "The truth matters little to Alpha Reynolds," Dominic replied grimly. "He's been looking for an excuse to challenge my authority for years. This is merely a convenient pretext. What will happen?" Dominic's jaw tightened. "War, unless I can convince him otherwise. I've called for a meeting on neutral ground, the Eastern Trading Post 3 days from now." Lily absorbed this, her mind racing. "And if the meeting fails? Then the Northern Pack will defend its territory and its members." His eyes met hers, fierce and determined. All of its members. The implication was clear. He considered her fully part of the pack now, someone worth fighting for, worth dying for. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. "I should come with you," she said suddenly. "To the meeting." Dominic's eyebrows rose. "Why would you suggest that?" Lily leaned forward, conviction growing with each word. "Because I'm an outsider. I have no history with either pack. I could offer a perspective neither you nor Alpha Reynolds possesses." "It's too dangerous," Dominic countered immediately. "Reynolds is unpredictable, volatile. If negotiations fail, if he attacks, then I'll be no safer here than at your side," Lily finished for him. "If war comes, all of Silvercrest will be at risk." Dominic studied her, conflict evident in his expression. "You don't understand what you're asking. These meetings between alphas, they're not civilized discussions. They're displays of power, of dominance. The scent of fear, of weakness, can derail everything." "Do I smell afraid to you?" Lily challenged. His nostrils flared slightly as he inhaled, his eyes darkening. "No," he admitted. You smell like courage, like determination. A pause, then more softly, like home. The last words hung between them, charged with meaning neither seemed ready to address. Lily broke the tension with a practical question. How many will accompany you to this meeting? A small contingent. Nadia, 2 senior betas, perhaps Elena as our record keeper. Then 1 more won't make a difference, Lily concluded, and I might be useful. In Pinewood I learned to observe without being noticed, to listen when others thought I wasn't worth acknowledging. Sometimes, information comes from unexpected sources. Dominic's resistance visibly wavered. The journey will be difficult. 3 days of hard riding, possibly in poor weather. I survived the journey here, Lily pointed out. I can survive this. Finally, he nodded, though reluctance still shadowed his features. Very well, but you will stay close to me at all times. And if I give you an order, any order, you follow it without question. Understood? Understood, Alpha. The formality of her response seemed to surprise him, a brief flash of something like disappointment crossing his face, before his expression settled back into determined resolve. Preparations are already underway, he said, rising from his chair. We leave at first light tomorrow. Nadia will help you gather what you'll need. As he moved toward the door, Lily called after him. Dominic? He paused, glancing back at her. Thank you for trusting me. His expression softened momentarily. You earned that trust the moment you offered your only bread to a wounded wolf you had every reason to fear. Then he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him. The trading post rose from the plains like an island in a sea of grass, its wooden palisades visible for miles in the clear autumn light. As Dominic had predicted, the journey had been grueling. 3 days of hard riding through increasingly hostile terrain, nights spent in makeshift camps with minimal comfort, always alert for signs of Southern Pack scouts or rogue wolves. Throughout it all, Lily had maintained a quiet determination that had earned her grudging respect from the other wolves. She didn't complain, didn't slow their pace, and when her body ached so badly she could barely stand after dismounting, she simply gritted her teeth and carried on. Now, as they approached the trading post gates, Dominic reined his horse alongside hers. Remember what I told you, he said, his voice low and intense. Stay close. Speak only when necessary. And if trouble starts, run for the horses and ride north without looking back, Lily finished, repeating his oft-given instruction. I remember. His gaze lingered on her face, searching for any sign of fear or doubt. Finding none, he nodded once, satisfaction briefly replacing concern. Alpha Reynolds will try to provoke me, he warned. He'll use any means available, insults, threats, even violence against his own wolves to demonstrate his power. Whatever happens, whatever you witness, remember that everything in these negotiations is calculated. Nothing is as spontaneous as it appears. The trading post gates swung open as they approached, revealing a bustling compound where traders from all territories gathered to exchange goods, information, and occasionally, political favors. The neutrality of the post was sacred, enforced by the Eastern Pack whose territory it occupied and whose prosperity depended on maintaining peace within its walls. Dominic's small group was directed to a large building at the center of the compound. Inside, a circular chamber had been prepared for the meeting, a round table surrounded by chairs, symbolizing the equal footing on which all parties theoretically stood. Theoretically, Nadia muttered when Lily commented on the arrangement. In practice, the strongest alpha always dominates these discussions, regardless of where they sit. They didn't wait long. The doors swung open again to admit Alpha Reynolds and his entourage. 6 wolves to Dominic's 5, a subtle assertion of superiority that Lily didn't miss. Reynolds himself was a surprise, younger than Dominic, lean rather than powerfully built, with sharp features and calculating eyes that took in everything, without revealing anything in return. Blackwood, he greeted, his tone deceptively pleasant. Still playing at being king, I see. Dominic remained standing, his posture relaxed but alert. Reynolds, I trust your journey was uneventful. As uneventful as one can expect when traveling through territories plagued by rogues you refuse to control. Reynolds's gaze swept over Dominic's group, dismissing Nadia and the betas before landing on Lily. And who is this? A new pet. Lily felt Dominic tense beside her, though his expression remained impassive. This is Lily, a valued member of my pack and my advisor in these negotiations. Reynolds' eyebrows rose mockingly. An Omega advisor? How Progressive of you. He moved closer, his scent aggressive as he deliberately invaded Lily's space. Tell me, little Omega, what advice do you offer your alpha? Beyond the obvious, that is. The insinuation was clear, designed to provoke both Lily's shame and Dominic's protective instincts. Lily felt rather than saw Dominic's control waver, his scent sharpening with anger. Before he could respond, she stepped forward, placing herself between the two alphas. I advise him that true strength is measured not by how much one can take, but by how much one can give, she said calmly. The Northern Pack thrives because every member contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. It's a model that has brought us prosperity and peace. Peace we hope to maintain through these discussions. Reynolds blinked, momentarily thrown by her response. He recovered quickly, his mocking smile returning. Pretty words from a pretty mouth. But they don't change the fact that rogues operating from Northern Territory have been raiding my pack's hunting grounds for months. If rogues are using our forests as cover, it's without our knowledge or consent, Dominic countered. My pack patrols our borders regularly. We've encountered no evidence of the activities you describe. Perhaps your patrols need better training, Reynolds suggested silkily. Or perhaps they've been instructed to turn a blind eye. The accusation hung in the air, dangerous and deliberate. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. You've made serious allegations, Reynolds. I'm here to address them directly. Tell me exactly where these raids have occurred, when, and what evidence connects them to my territory. What followed was hours of tense negotiation, with Reynolds providing vague accounts that never quite formed a coherent pattern. Each time Dominic pressed for specifics, Reynolds deflected or introduced new grievances. It became increasingly clear to Lily that the Southern Alpha had no interest in resolution, only in creating a pretext for conflict. As the afternoon wore on, servants brought refreshments. Lily noticed that Reynolds consumed his wine quickly, ordering more with increasing frequency. His gestures became more expansive, his tone more openly hostile. You've built your reputation on lies, Blackwood, he said at one point, his words slightly slurred. The Great Wolf King, defender of the weak. But we all know the truth. You're collecting strays and misfits because no respectable wolf would follow you otherwise. Dominic remained unmoved. Is that why 3 of your senior betas sought refuge in my pack last year? Because I'm such an undesirable alpha. Reynolds's face darkened with fury. They were traitors, weaklings who couldn't handle the discipline required to maintain a strong pack. They were wolves who refused to participate in your purges, Dominic corrected quietly, who couldn't stand by while you executed Omegas for perceived inadequacies or failings. The accusation silenced the room. Even Reynolds' own wolves looked uncomfortable, gazes lowered, scents spiking with shame or fear. So that's what this is really about, Lily said suddenly, the pieces falling into place. Not rogues or raids, but the wolves who fled your pack. You want them back. Reynolds' attention snapped to her, his eyes narrowing dangerously. Stay out of matters you don't understand, Omega. But Lily had seen the confirmation in his reaction. The refugees told stories, didn't they? About what happens in the Southern Pack, about how you treat those you consider beneath you. And now others are beginning to listen. Enough! Reynolds slammed his fist on the table, wine sloshing from overturned glasses. I won't be lectured by Blackwood's whore. The insult cracked through the room like lightning. Dominic was on his feet in an instant, a growl building in his chest. The Southern wolves rose as well, hands hovering near concealed weapons. But it was Lily who stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Is that the best you can do, Alpha Reynolds? Resort to crude insults when faced with uncomfortable truths? Reynolds stared at her, momentarily speechless. You came here not to negotiate, but to intimidate, she continued, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. You expected Dominic to either submit to your demands or react violently to your provocations, giving you justification for war. But he's offered you a third option, a genuine resolution based on facts rather than accusations, and you've refused it at every turn. You know nothing of pack politics, Omega, Reynolds sneered, though the effect was somewhat undermined by his unsteady stance. Perhaps not, Lily acknowledged, but I recognize a bully when I see one, and bullies, in my experience, are simply afraid of losing the power they've seized through fear, rather than earned through respect. A hush fell over the chamber. Reynolds' face contorted with rage, his control slipping as he took a threatening step toward Lily. "You dare!" "She speaks with my voice," Dominic interrupted, his tone deadly quiet as he positioned himself at Lily's side. "Attack her, and you attack the Northern Alpha. Consider your next move carefully, Reynolds." For a tense moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then, unexpectedly, one of Reynolds' own betas stepped forward, placing a restraining hand on his alpha's arm. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion tomorrow," the beta suggested cautiously. "When cooler heads prevail." Reynolds shook off the beta's hand, but the interruption had broken the immediate tension. "Tomorrow," he agreed grudgingly. "But I warn you, Blackwood, my patience is not limitless." As the Southern contingent filed out, Dominic remained at Lily's side, his presence solid and reassuring. Only when the doors closed behind them did he turn to her, his expression a complex mixture of concern, pride, and something deeper that made her heart race. "That," he said softly, "was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've ever witnessed." Lily exhaled shakily, the adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation beginning to ebb. "I'm still trying to decide which." Dominic's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with a gentle pressure that anchored her to the present. "You saw what none of us did, the true motivation behind Reynolds' aggression." "How?" "I listened," Lily replied simply. "Not just to what he said, but to what he avoided saying. When you mentioned the refugees, his scent changed, became sharper, more aggressive. That's when I knew." Nadia approached, her expression thoughtful. "Reynolds won't let this go easily. His pride won't allow it." "No," Dominic agreed, "but Lily has given us an advantage. Now we know what he truly wants, what he fears." His fingers tightened around Lily's. "Tomorrow, we use that knowledge." As they left the chamber to return to their assigned quarters within the trading post, Lily found herself reflecting on how far she had come from the lonely Omega in Pinewood. A week ago, she had been invisible, inconsequential. Now she stood beside an alpha, beside Dominic, as an equal, her voice heard, her insights valued. The transformation was as exhilarating as it was terrifying, because somewhere between offering her bread to a wounded wolf and standing against a hostile alpha, Lily had discovered not just her courage, but her heart, and that heart, against all reason and caution, had begun to beat for Dominic. What she couldn't know, as they walked side by side through the trading post's torchlit pathways, was that Dominic's heart had already recognized its match. The Wolf King, who had built his pack on principles of equality and compassion, had found those same values embodied in a quiet Omega who had once given him her only bread. And in that recognition lay the future of not just two wolves, but of packs across the territories, a future that would begin with the dawn, with courage, and with love that had begun with a simple act of kindness. As they reached their quarters, Dominic paused, his gaze meeting Lily's with newfound clarity. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said softly, "know that you have changed everything. For the pack. For me." Lily smiled, certainty filling her for the first time in her life. "Then we face it together, as equals, as pack. As mates," Dominic added, the question implicit in his tone. And in the quiet of the trading post night, with the future uncertain, but the present absolutely clear, Lily gave the only answer her heart would allow. As mates, the bond that had begun with bread, given freely to a wounded wolf, was sealed with a kiss, a promise of tomorrow, of strength found in compassion, of a love that would transform not just two lives, but the very meaning of pack itself. For in the end, it wasn't Dominic's power that had changed Lily's world, but her kindness that had changed his. And together, they would build something neither could have created alone. A future where no wolf stood alone, where strength was measured by what one gave rather than what one took, and where the true meaning of alpha was not to rule, but to serve. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.